weekly Q&A about politics, about what's happening here and elsewhere, going out on all major platforms. I think Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. Feel free to throw in any questions you have and I'll do my very best to answer. Share, like, all that good stuff. Sorry, I'm just seeing myself here. My mouse is not functioning very well. I'm trying to get myself off my own screen here so I can see your comments without having to look at myself. And my mouse is acting funny. Give me a second. There we go. Kind of. Yes. So what I was going to focus on today is the new rent pressure zone stuff that the government is talking about, and the Great March to Gaza that I was participating in. Just came home on Tuesday. I was gone from Thursday lunchtime or so till Tuesday afternoon. First of all, I presume people have seen this. The government has a new plan for housing, new plan to deal with the crisis in the rental market, and the plan is pay more rent. That's the plan. The plan is allow rents to rise even faster than they're rising. But don't worry, in the long run, by allowing rents to rise faster, rents will ultimately come down. So don't worry about it. This is literally the government's plan. So the government is stripping back rent protections, allowing a reset of rent for basically everybody into the future every 6 years to catch up to market rent. So you're protected for 6 years and then boom, faced with a massive rise that you can't necessarily afford paying, pushing up rises, rents everywhere, pushing up house prices everywhere. And then for some groups, getting absolutely screwed, students in particular. So students in private rent accommodation are going to face huge rent increases every year, because often they will rent from September till June or July or whatever. So each time they come back in September, even if it's the same accommodation, the landlord is going to be able to put up their prices, put up the rent. I mean, the government won't quite come out and say it, that we're going to increase rent and that'll attract investment. That is literally their plan. They say this is going to have more investment. The only way they're getting more investment is by allowing rents to rise even further. Rents have doubled over the past 10 years. Homelessness have tripled over the past 10 years. House prices are up at a record high. There's 500,000 young people unable to afford to move out of their family home. Thousands and thousands of young people are forced to emigrate because of the housing crisis. We can't get teachers in schools in Dublin because of the housing crisis. We can't get therapists for children with special needs in Ireland, in Dublin in particular, and in the cities in particular, because of the housing crisis, as well as other things. And the government's plan is to allow rents to rise even faster. And the reason for this is they say there's been a decline in investment by equity funds, by institutional investors, what you and I know as vulture funds, and they want to get more of them in. And the best way to do that is to increase their yield by allowing rent to rise even higher. It's not because these people aren't making profit. In the government's own report, it shows they're making actually very healthy profits. But see, it's not enough profit for them. And so the logic of free market fundamentalism is that, well, in order to get them in, we just have to allow rents to rise even faster, give them an even higher return, and then that'll all work. I mean, in reality, that's just ideological cover for the fact that this government represents corporate landlords. This government represents big private developers. A large portion of them are landlords themselves. They're looking after their class interests. And then they pretend, don't worry, it'll all trickle down or whatever. But we've had 10 years of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael governments making the housing crisis worse and worse and worse because they're devoted to just giving more and more money to those at the top. And the central bank came out and said this is going to be painful for renters. And it's always pain that's suffered by workers, by renters, by young people. They're the ones who have to suffer the pain for the benefit of the economy as a whole. It's never the corporations who have to suffer the pain. So it's madness, absolute madness. We had a good Raise the Roof rally outside the Dáil on Tuesday. It was great. About 1,000 people. I got the opportunity on behalf of People for Profit to address the crowd. A good response for what I was saying, which was putting forward the need for a government for renters, for workers, a socialist government, a government that's going to have a state construction company to build social and affordable housing at scale. A government's going to bring rent controls in to reduce rents. A government's going to ban no-fault evictions. But also saying, look, we can't wait. We cannot wait for the next election. If we wait till the next election, there'll be 20,000 people homeless. If we wait for the next election, rents will be $3,000 a month, $3,500 a month in Dublin. House prices will be even higher. So we need a movement now, and Tuesday's protest needs to be the start of that. The next step in that is CATU, the Communities and Tenants Union, have called a protest for Saturday the 5th of July at 1 o'clock in Dublin city centre. So hopefully see you there. Just a question coming in on Instagram. Amna Saeed, how are you? I'm grand. I am tired, to be honest, after the trip to Egypt. James Stokes asked, are we returning to the early 2000s war in the Middle East caused by America? Certainly a big element of that. It's remarkable, isn't it, how the propaganda trying to prepare people for even worse atrocities in Iran is so similar to what they tried in terms of the propaganda about Iraq in 2003. Like, that's what they're doing. There's a big propaganda operation taking place now. When this is just imperialism, Western imperialism, Israeli imperialism in the region. It's absolutely horrendous. And let's remember that none of this could happen without Israel could not behave as it does in the region without the active military support, financial support, political support of the major states in the West. That was one of the reasons I participated in the global march to Gaza. So over 4,000 people from more than 60 countries come together in Egypt to march to the Rafah crossing to say stop the starvation of the people of Gaza, stop using aid as a weapon of war, shooting people down whenever they're queuing for aid, stop using aid to pursue a policy of ethnic cleansing, end the genocide, free Palestine. So we didn't succeed, unfortunately, in getting to the Rafah crossing. The Egyptian regime adopted an approach of quite harsh repression to stop that. There's still people in detention. There were people who faced physical violence. I was detained twice. But we did, I think, raise awareness about what's happening and about, the need for Israel to stop, but also the complicity of Western regimes and the need for action in our own countries. So, this phase of the Great March to Gaza is done. But the next phase is there's a meeting next week in Brussels of European foreign affairs ministers with, incredibly, the Israeli foreign affairs minister. Outrageous when they're 20 months into a genocide. And yet the European Commission president is saying Israel has the right to defend itself, is saying that the main source of regional instability is Iran. Like, absolutely crazy stuff. But that's what they're saying. If you have any questions, throw them in there and I'll try to address them. Thoughts on new proposed housing if had, what will be prevented? You might go again on that question. Anne Osborne says, try sort your own country first. I don't know, Anne, were you there on Tuesday night about the housing crisis? You might, if you come back on that and tell us whether you're there on Tuesday. Because I was there. I was organising building for the neutrality protest that happened on Saturday. I don't know, were you there at that one? It seems to me that those of us who are most active against war in solidarity with Palestine are also the ones who are most active on the things affecting people in this country. Because for me, it's all part of the one system, a system of capitalism and imperialism, which puts profit before people. And, what we see happening in the Middle East by Israel is then exported elsewhere. So, for me, all these struggles are interconnected. Anna says, welcome back. Does that mean we need to think about getting out of Ireland because I wouldn't be able to afford the rent with one income? Well, I think it means we need to build a mass movement on housing. That's what it means. We can't wait. We have to force them back. This is a landlord's government by landlord for landlord. We absolutely have to force them back. So stay and fight if you possibly can. Thoughts on the new proposed housing regulations relating to landlord 2% raise market rate then? Yes, after 6 years. This is a disaster. This is consciously a policy to allow rents to rise even faster. They kind of tried to give the impression that, don't worry, this won't kick in until 2032. But that's not true. Any tenancies that come to an end, like from March of 2026, will immediately be faced with this market reset rate, which will see rents absolutely soar, and it'll be a real disaster. Yes, I agree, James. Raise the Roof rally had a good crowd. Sorry, just grabbing my drink. Fire in any more questions there, and I'll do my best to answer them. Any way to prevent this proposal being enacted? It would likely be enacted. Yes. What it would take is a mass movement. Let's say we had 5,000 people on the streets on Saturday, the 5th of July. That is Saturday. Sorry, my mouse is up. Saturday the 5th of. It's Saturday 2 weeks. That'd be a good start, a good next stage. Then let's say we have assemblies across the country in every constituency, where hundreds of people come together in each of them. That's a lot of people. And let's say those people take on to say, okay, we're all going to build together for a big protest in the run-up to the budget. And let's say we had 20,000 people on the streets in the run-up to the budget. Government would be under pressure, and we could keep ramping that up. Call for the trade unions to really use their power to mobilise. So it's not over. It's a question of, can we mobilise the people to stop them. Anya asks, what is your opinion on the City West Hotel purchase to become an iPass centre permanently? Well, I think it's scandalous how much money City West Hotel has been given by the taxpayer, by the public, over the past 5 or 6 years. We've more than paid for it already, and it should be simply taken, it should be expropriated, it should be nationalised, taken into public ownership, and then used for now, while we have a crisis in terms of accommodation for those seeking asylum in this country, as decent quality, not like it currently is. It's pretty horrendous now for asylum seekers. Decent quality accommodation for asylum seekers. It can also be used for decent quality accommodation linked to that for other homeless people. Sarah asks, were you on annual leave going to Egypt? I mean, they don't have a thing called annual leave here in the Dáil. There is no mechanism to register for annual leave or not. So like the truth is, TDs could not turn up to work a single day. They could not do anything. They'd still get paid, right? That's not me. You can check my record. Go on to KildareStreet.com. Check the record of how many times I've spoken in the Dáil. Check the record of how many parliamentary questions I've put in. I am in the top 1 on parliamentary questions and the top 2 or 3 in terms of the number of times speaking in the Dáil. So I don't think you'll be able to fault my record. You might not agree with me what I say, but I think people who know me, even if they disagree with me, would say that I work hard in terms of the Dáil. Why is my comment asking, are you going to a concert flagged? I don't know. Sorry, I've nothing to do with that. You're nothing, will you stop? Will you be able to get policy through for mandatory voting like Australia? I don't support mandatory voting, to be honest. I mean, I think people should vote. I think they should vote for people before profit. But I don't really see the point in forcing people to vote, to be honest. I think people have a right not to vote as well. And it's the job of people in parties to convince people that it's worth voting. And if we can't, well then that's partly on the parties. Thanks, George. Jude, yes I am. You're on to me. Would you recommend someone doing a politics degree in college currently to get involved in a party? I would if you agree with the party. Yeah, not just for the sake of it, Kane, are you in favour of IPAS centres, Paul? Actually, I'm in favour of getting rid of the whole system of direct provision, whereby private companies are able to profit. I'm in favour of treating people properly. It's horrendous. Do you know, like IPAS centres are worse than homeless accommodation, right? Homeless accommodation is pretty bad, and IPAS centres are even worse, right? So we're treating people really, really terribly. And there's plenty of money in this country. It's not held by ordinary people, presumably like yourselves watching. It's held by those at the top who are making massive profit from the housing crisis. Housing crisis is manufactured to transfer wealth from ordinary people to the big corporate landlords and the private developers. And we need to unite ordinary people against those at the top. Is there any way there could be another general election before the end of this government's tenure? Yes, there can be. It's a question of whether the government's under enough pressure at the moment or not. We need to do that. User 1484708 says, seems to not believe that there's plenty of money in this country. Do you know how much of a surplus the government had last year? About 26 billion euros. Do you know how much the wealth of the 1% is increasing this year? Every single year it's going up like massively. The rich are so rich. This is a very, very wealthy country. The problem is the wealth is hoarded at the top. I wouldn't be surprised. You might show me. You might let me know. But I wouldn't be surprised if you're kind of influenced by some of the right-wing people who are acting as tools of those at the very top to try and get people not to look at the top of the people who have all the money, who have all the power, and instead to blame vulnerable, poor people and think that they're the problem. If so, then you're part of a big distraction technique to protect the rich and powerful in this country. Will a vote of no confidence be called in this government? It probably will be. As it stands, we wouldn't win the vote, so they'll pass a vote of confidence. Lauren says, what do you think of the protest, the way they're getting massive? Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, I think the biggest protest we saw recently, 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe 20 or 30,000 people protesting for Palestine, the biggest protest we've seen yet. It was great to see the housing protest on Tuesday, Raise the Roof, and then we'll see on Saturday, the 5th of July, hopefully big numbers out for the housing protest. So yeah, I think you're beginning to see people power now emerging, which is great. Do you think having an Irish flag means you're far right? No, definitely not. The Ukrainians got the free houses, all the lovely cars must be poor, are they? No Ukrainians got free houses. But fair play to you, doing the dirty work of the private landlords and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I'm sure they're happy with you. I hope they throw you a bone. Do you think it could escalate to World War III? It's possible. Don't you think we should focus on our homeless first rather than IPAS centres? I think that we have the resources in this country for nobody to be sleeping on the streets. And actually, I think if we unite people to say that, like, it's not acceptable for anyone to be forced to sleep on the streets, that helps everybody, right? If we get into the business of deliberately putting, say, asylum seekers on the streets, which the government did. The government had empty beds. They've got about 7,000 empty beds now. I checked recently. And yet they've about 3,000 homeless asylum seekers who they have made deliberately homeless. I think that actually serves. They use that then as a wedge to attack Irish homeless people as well. We're better off uniting people against those at the top and the government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. There's beeping on your side. Yeah, it's a bell, the doll. You get used to it after a while. Here, there's bells all the time. So, whereas a bell like this is a 2-tone bell, that means Shannon. If it's a 1-tone bell, it means doll. If it's a 3-tone bell, it means committee. Because of the number of syllables. I think that's what we're guessing. I don't really know about puritanical thinking on the left. I don't really think so. I mean, there's definitely people on the left I disagree with and argue with, but I don't really think puritanical thinking is the main issue. Oh, hey, Joe. Did you get from Instagram? Joe from UK was on the bus with me in Egypt, Free Palestine. You got home okay? Is everyone else from Britain home okay? Let me know. Fire that in. Why can't Irish people get houses, Paul? Because the housing market is set up for the people at the top to profit at the expense of ordinary people, no matter where they come from. And because the state basically refuses to build social and affordable housing, because the state refuses to have proper rent controls to bring rents down. That's why. And so we need to build a housing movement that unites people against those who are responsible for the housing crisis. Oh, that's good about the Samud convoy and Global March to Gaza participants going there now. Yep. Why don't I read all the questions Henan asks? Because they just fly by too quickly, but I'm doing my best. How did I get into politics? I was kind of radicalized by the anti-capitalist, anti-globalization movement in the late 90s. Became a socialist. Then the war in Iraq happened, which really confirmed me both in my beliefs that this system is fundamentally barbaric, doesn't care about human lives, and profit is what drives it. They're willing to lie, they don't care about democracy, and that then cemented me that, like, you know, I was going to devote a large portion of my life to trying to fundamentally transform society, fighting for socialist or eco-socialist change. Vacant houses someone's raising, yeah, plenty of them, because the government refuses to touch them. They should be compulsorily purchased. So fine, we buy them at market rate and then use them as social and affordable housing. The spent legislation, good question. Send me an email about that, will you? And I'll check, because I was inquiring about that in the last all. I think it was kind of being long fingered. Send me an email and I'll check the latest. Shannon LNG, yeah. I was just at a briefing there, just at 12 o'clock, and there's a peace, climate justice and peace camp. I might have the word slightly wrong. Outside the Dáil at the moment, focused on Shannon LNG. This is madness. We're going to be importing fracked gas. Fair play, Joe. March Against Saturday in London was supporting NECAP yesterday. That's great. I'm in London myself at the weekend. I'm speaking at Festival of Oppressed, organised by RS21. So I don't know if I'll be able to get along to the march or not. Someone on Instagram is asking, a young fellow was asking, why Israel bombed Iran? What's the motivating force behind war? Not sure I explained well, but I reckon people want to know. Yeah, it was funny. I was on Ireland AM this morning, and Tommy, I was saying how horrible, how awful, like, how people are being slaughtered in Iran and in Gaza, and Tommy was like, oh, but like, surely this, and how this is all supported by the West, and that this is awful. He was like, but surely there has to be kind of another side to this. Surely there's like a reason that they're doing this. And I was like, oh, yes, like imperialism. I didn't quite use those words, but like fundamentally, the story is that Israel gets to do whatever they want because they are an agent of the West in the Middle East, which has all these vital resources, in particular oil and gas. Like, that's the essence of it. And like, they're an agent with a fair degree of autonomy that go off and do their own things that, like, sometimes their supporters in the West think, ooh, that goes a bit too far or whatever. But like, that's the relationship. They act as an agent of Western imperialism in the Middle East, and for that, they get carte blanche. They get billions of euros of military aid every single year. They get political support, military support, and so on. Why would Fine Gael on Instagram, why would Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil not support the vote on banning fox hunting? Sinn Féin didn't support it either, to tell you that. Yeah. Because they support fox hunting, that's why. Draw your own conclusions. That's Tommy Bow, by the way, I was mentioning. Sorry, just first name terms, What are your thoughts on riots in Ballymena? It's pretty horrendous, isn't it? And it shows where racist, far-right rhetoric gets us. It's why it's really important to support the protest this Saturday, Love Ireland, Hate Racism. That's at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock at the assembly at the Central Bank Plaza on Dame Street. I'm getting the time here. 1:30. I was right. Between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Split the difference. Tig asks, are you considering running for president now or in the future? Tig, I'm going to give you an exclusive right now. No, I'm not. I'm definitely not. But I hope we will have a united left candidate for president with a serious chance of winning. Someone says, why did you take down your pride flag from your profile? I saw a bit of trolling around this. There was no great thought in it. I just thought, I'm going on this great march to Gaza. Makes sense to put up a Palestinian flag, doesn't it? And I kind of don't want to be one of those people with like a million flags in your profile, for everything you support. So I thought, I'll just swap that out. I didn't. There was no big deal about it. I'm still all for trans rights. I'm against the attacks on trans rights, and proudly and unapologetically. So yeah. Do you regret not proposing a collective opposition program for government, which the left had? I mean, we did. So I don't really know what you mean by that. We didn't get a majority, Would you consider abolition of the Seanad and or the presidency? Yeah. I think this is a personal view, because I'm not sure. I think PPP voted against the abolition of the Seanad. I think. I wasn't in PPP at the time. I have to say, I'm in favour of the abolition of the Seanad. I think it's an undemocratic institution. And I kind of also am in favour of the abolition of the presidency, being honest. I think having a parliament that is elected and so on is a more democratic way of organising society. I think there's more democratic ways, again, more direct democracy, having, councils, assemblies in local areas, communities and workplaces. I stand for a socialist model of democracy, which also has democratic control over economic decisions. At the moment, you don't get those decisions. You don't get those choices. You don't get power over those things. That's the big corporations choose what happens in terms of housing, what happens in terms of jobs. Those things should be under democratic control. Thanks for you got back safe. How long was it detained by the Egyptian authorities? So it was detained twice. Once on Friday, from maybe Egyptian time. What time did we get there? I'm trying to think. Maybe we got to this place, Ismailia, at about 3, and then we were dropped at the airport at about 2 in the morning, so 11 hours, and then on Monday in the police station for 9 hours. I went in there at 12:30 and I got out at 9:30. Yes, sorry, Bill. I see what you're saying. That's Dublin for you. It says, do you actually do any of the work you were elected to do? I do. And that's why I get re-elected. I've now been re-elected. So I was elected first at all in 2014. I was re-elected in 2016. I was re-elected in 2020. I was re-elected in 2024. It's the people who choose for me to be a TD or not to be a TD. They've chosen for me to be a TD. They clearly think I do the work that I'm elected to do. You might have a different view of what I should be doing. Maybe you think I should be supporting Israel, but most of the people who vote for me and most of the people in my constituency don't think that. And the response I've gotten so far from after I came back from Egypt has been overwhelmingly positive. How do you respond to Fianna Fáil Fine Gael and the public sector being unable to deliver the volume houses needed? That's a political choice the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have made. Like, ultimately it's workers who build houses, right? It isn't like the state as an abstract entity or institutional investors as an abstract entity. It's workers. Workers actually build the houses, right? The question is who gets to direct like what the workers do. At the moment we have loads of workers building offices, building luxury apartments that ordinary people can't afford. If we had a state construction company that attracted these workers in to work for it rather than the private for-profit construction companies, and we then we have apprentices, we're trying to attract people back from abroad, then we can build significant numbers of social and affordable housing. They can't build any more housing, you know what I mean? It's the same number of workers or whatever, by saying, it's the private sector that's going to do it. But the result is that the labour is like misdirected, because of profit. Like profit is, under the market system, profit decides what happens. Whereas we think that social need should decide what happens. DJ Tato Man, I like your name on Instagram. Any advice on getting more people on the left in general united to feel the lack of this is helping getting rise in the far right? Yes, but I would be kind of optimistic. There's a lot happening actually in the space of left cooperation these days. You look at the Raise the Roof stuff, you look at the Irish Neutrality League and Together for Neutrality. There's been a lot of cooperation around Palestine and Gaza, so there's more and stuff cooperation happening at the moment. I think Feet on the Soil asked a good question on Instagram about the balance of protecting the environment and housing the public. I think there is a balance. The question is what sort of developments you have and so on to ensure that you're building sustainable communities as well, which means ones that are kind of in line with nature, or like, not necessarily in line with nature, like look, they are man-made or human-made structures, right? But it's a question of like balanced development, putting the infrastructure in, and then trying to protect like our natural environment, whereas the government is like abandoning that. I don't know if you noticed that they're redesignating all our water. All our water is basically, like, loads of our water, more than a third, is of poor quality, are like, lakes and rivers and stuff, and they're redesignating them in such a way just to accept they're going to be of poor quality and to get rid of the target. So instead of meeting the target, they're just redesignating them. It's really awful. Exactly, ladies. What did you go over there for? Over to Egypt, I presume. To try and draw attention to this forced starvation, the slaughter that's happening in Gaza, and to put pressure on Israel to stop it, and to draw attention to the Western complicity. And I think, although we didn't reach Rafah, we succeeded in some of those aims. Do I think the people in Northern Ireland should be able to vote for the Irish president? I do. Sorry, yeah, that's Dublin for you. Say, yeah, I remember you doing great work, but I only see you doing work in the likes of Gaza. I can't help what you see, like the Raise the Roof protest, all the neutrality stuff we've been doing, all the work I do for Dublin Southwest. I mean, fighting on whole issues in terms of school funding, schools getting absolutely screwed over. I think if you talk to people, not everyone, right? But if you talk to lots of people in Dublin Southwest, they'll say to you, "Oh yeah, Paul comes back to you quickly. He tries to help people. Can't always help people, but there's a load of other stuff that's going on that you might not see beyond the kind of stuff that gets in the news that you become aware of." Yes, Aaron, we do. We think it's a disaster. We think we should get rid of the direct provision model whereby private companies are making huge money from the iPass system, and the state should do it directly and provide decent accommodation for people and treat people properly. Jess asked, are you going to house any immigrants? Yeah, I have one living with me now. She's my wife. Yeah, I couldn't kick her out. Alright, I'm going to go shortly because I have to record a quick video for something else. And then I got to do a few more things. Diego, I will try and do events outside of Dublin. PPP does plenty of events outside of Dublin, so keep an eye on that. Yes, it is a conflict. A massive number of politicians are also landlords with multiple houses, definitely. I mean, they shouldn't be voting on this stuff, to be honest. Thanks a million, Owen. I really appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to run. Take care. Been a good engagement. I'll be back probably next week.